Well, welcome to the 700 Club. We're all still recovering from the events of the weekend, the assassination attempt where we witnessed courage under fire and then a pivotal moment between life and death. Former President Donald Trump says if he hadn't slightly turned his head while speaking at Saturday night's rally, he would not have survived an assassin's bullet.
Today, President Trump is in Milwaukee for the first day of the Republican National Convention. Meanwhile, investigators are searching for clues as to why the shooter tried to kill the president and how he came so close to succeeding. CBN's Tara Mergener reports from the rally in Pennsylvania.
Authorities are still looking for a motive behind the shooting of former President Donald Trump. The 20-year-old left no manifesto and no clues on social media as to why he carried out the attack. Gunfire erupting just minutes into Trump's speech.
I've seen the bullets go flying towards the stage.
He grabs his right ear and ducks behind the podium.
We were on the stands. We were about 25 feet behind him, maybe 30 feet, and I could hear zing, zing. I could hear the bullets go, and I saw him go like this, like a bee had stung him, and within seconds he was on the ground and the Secret Service was all over top of him.
The sniper returning fire and stopping the attack in seconds.
Until he identified it as a threat, it was an individual from 200 yards moving on a rooftop. He had a very difficult job, identified the threat, and neutralized it within a second.
After the Secret Service got Trump to his feet, he pumps his fist in the air, shouting "fight," and is rushed from the scene. Were you relieved when he put his fist up and you could see he was okay?
Yes. Oh my God, yeah. We thought they killed him. We thought they killed him. We really did.
Just pure evil, you know. And, you know, Jesus had his, you know, he poured his precious blood over him, over Trump, protected him.
In an interview with the New York Post, Trump said that if he hadn't turned his head to read a chart, he would not have survived the attack. "I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead," he said. "I'm supposed to be dead." 2 people in the crowd were critically injured, another killed. Corey Comparator was a 50-year-old father and former Pennsylvania fire chief. Pennsylvania's governor paying tribute on Sunday.
Corey was a firefighter. Corey dove on his family to protect them last night.
Trump's rally was his last before the Republican National Convention. He was showing a chart of border crossing numbers when the shots rang out. The fairgrounds behind me are now an active crime scene.
This is just a bad day.
You were right there?
I was right there, right in front by the railing, the fence, and I could see Donald Trump, and I seen him holding his ear. This has got to stop. This has got to stop. The gunman has been identified as 20-year-old Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Investigators say an AR-15 style rifle recovered at the scene was legally purchased by his father, and that explosives were found in his car. Investigators believe he acted alone. This image shows the roof where he carried out his attack. This man says he tried repeatedly to warn the Secret Service that a man was climbing onto the roof.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us. We're like, hey, right here on the roof, we can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking?
A local police officer nearly confronted the shooter, but retreated when he pointed the gun at him. With the Republican National Convention starting in Milwaukee today, President Biden says he's directed the Secret Service to review all security protocols for the event. Meanwhile, a House committee has called on the head of the Secret Service to testify about why this assassination attempt nearly succeeded. In Butler, Pennsylvania, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
I've got to call it for how I see it. Courage under fire. When I used to lead missionary groups from the Philippines into nations in Asia, there would be a couple of different reactions. One, you'd see the poverty, you'd see the overwhelming need, and there were two responses. One, what can I do to help, and how do I make a difference? The other is, how quickly can I get to the airport and get out of here? And I call it the foxhole test. We saw a foxhole test of a candidate for public office, and I find it absolutely amazing that you can take a bullet and stand up and raise your fist and say, we need to fight on. That is courage under fire. Usually people's knees get weak and they try to find a way to hide. But here he is saying, no, that is going to go down in American history as one of the most iconic photographs of all time. In prayer, after all of this, trying to recover, well, you know, Lord, what do you want us to do? How should we respond to these events? And it was curious, he led me into 1 Peter chapter 3. Finally, all of you, let me underline that, all of you, be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. So if you're a Christian and you're part of the Democrat Party, let me encourage you, try to bless a MAGA Republican today. If you're a MAGA Republican, you're a supporter of Donald Trump, I encourage you, do the same thing. Try to find a Democrat you can bless. We've got to come together as a nation. The level of rhetoric has certainly led to this kind of violence. We're being torn apart at our innermost core over politics. It shouldn't be that way. Melania Trump came out with a letter that should ring through the ages, and I'll just quote part of it. Let us remember that when the time comes to look beyond the left and the right, beyond the red and the blue, we all come from families with the passion to fight for a better life together while we are here in this earthly realm. Let me amen that. While we're here on this earth, let's be a blessing to each other. Let's not return evil with evil, reviling for reviling. Let us bless people, and in that, we will inherit a blessing. Well, after Saturday's attack, both Republicans and Democrats are urging Americans to tone down political discourse. In an address from the Oval Office last night, President Biden said politics should never be a violent battlefield. George Thomas has more.
In an Oval Office address, President Biden urged Americans to take a step back and reject violence, saying that politics should never be a killing field.
We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. All of us now face a time of testing as the election approaches. And the higher the stakes, the more fervent the passions become. This places an added burden on each of us to ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, we must never descend into violence.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, who is part of a prayer group that regularly meets on Capitol Hill, believes we simply cannot see each other as enemies, irrespective of our different political views.
All of us are reaching out to each other in Congress. As you know, I'm an active member of our senatorial prayer group that tries to not just lower the temperature, but to be role models to each other of how to respect each other as people.
A similar sentiment echoed by South Carolina's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is thankful knowing just how close the former president came to possibly losing his life. On Sunday, Trump wrote on Truth Social, "It was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening."
I was just grateful that he made it. I mean, fate stepped in, God, the hand of God, call it whatever you like. But for the country, we probably need to do some soul searching as a nation.
In a statement, former First Lady Melania Trump expressed thanks for those who have reached out beyond the political divide to send their support. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders calling political violence un-American, urged citizens to perhaps take a different view of the process.
The bottom line is what we need as a nation, what a democracy is about, is not radical rhetoric. What it is about is a serious discussion of where we are as a nation and how we go forward. You know, in a certain way, Kristen, politics should be kind of boring.
Meanwhile, security experts continue to sound the alarm about growing political violence in our culture, warning that threats against local and state office holders have jumped sharply in recent years.
This is the most complex, dynamic, and dangerous threat environment that I've experienced in the 40 years that I've been working in law enforcement and homeland security. We are an angry, divided nation, and that anger and division has become intertwined in our political discourse. There are a growing number of people in this country who believe that violence is an appropriate way to express their ideological or political views.
Trump is now in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. He told the New York Post, "I want to try to unite our country, but I don't know if that's possible. People are very divided." Evangelist Greg Laurie urged people to pray for our nation and its leaders, writing on X that America stands at a pivotal crossroads, and now more than ever, we need God, we need the Bible, and we need the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, CBN chief political analyst David Brody joins us now. So, David, you spoke with Donald Trump on the phone last night. What did he say?
I did. It was late Sunday night. It was a quick conversation. He was between meetings, but he was in high spirits. He had energy in his voice. I asked him, I said, first of all, I asked him, I said, "Are you in any pain?" He said, "No, I'm good, and I'm getting better," is what he said. And then I said, "How can people pray for you?" He says, "It's not about me. Please pray for this nation. We are in a sad, terrible state." And that was pretty much the extent of it. It was, once again, a quick conversation. It was in between meetings, but we did have a chance to speak. You know, I spoke to Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, this morning, who told me that Donald Trump is a changed man because of this. Now, Corey knows Donald Trump very well. You get a sense, Gordon, that right now we're entering new territory for Donald Trump, a fertile ground, if you will, spiritual and otherwise. You wonder exactly what God is up to here. And I guess there's a ... to all of this, because anytime you're through something like that, it will change you for sure. You know, Ronald Reagan, after the assassination attempt on his life, said that God had spared him for a purpose. And ultimately, that purpose was to defeat the godless Soviet Union at the time and tear down this wall. What is the purpose for Donald Trump as we move forward? We wait for the ... now, Gordon.
Well, we certainly do. It's a near-death experience, and absolutely, it will change you. I was in D.C. Working in the News Bureau back in 1980 when the assassination attempt against Reagan, it was touch and go. We didn't know if he was going to make it. And when he finally emerged and waved from the hospital room, it was, it was quite a moment. But it seemed to go away over time. The attacks against Reagan. It's odd. It reminds me of it so much because I remember people on the left saying, if Ronald Reagan wins, it's the end of America, and I've got to move to New Zealand and raise sheep and all this kind of stuff. And it died down for a while, and then it just came roaring back. I hope that doesn't happen this time. I hope we can, I guess, stop being so rabidly partisan. Well, the convention's going to begin today, and Nikki Haley is back on being invited. She's going to speak, and the reports are the entire tone of the convention is going to change. What's the new message from the convention?
Right. Well, the new message is literally going to be unity, but it's being scripted as we speak. You know, Donald Trump has said, he's on record now, saying that he's thrown out his what he calls the old convention speech. He had it written. He said it was going to be a humdinger, but that was pre-Butler, Pennsylvania over the weekend. That speech, he says, is now gone. He says there's an opportunity now to bring the nation together, and he wants to do that. He understands the moment, and he understands what needs to be done. That is pretty neat, as we would like to say, from Donald Trump to say that. Now, we wait and see what that speech is like. We are told by surrogates to his campaign, not just surrogates, but actually campaign officials, that they are telling Republicans this week to tone it down as it relates to any sort of rhetoric of the blame game with Biden and Democrats and some of the language they've used to incite some of this, incite national or not incite unity. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's kind of the plan, to tone it down and to actually bring people together.
Well, I like that phrase. Let's incite unity. That's a wonderful way to phrase it. And I hope that we can all come together and realize we're all in this together. Let's work together for the future, not just for us, but for our children and our grandchildren. So turn back just to the Secret Service. It's just amazing to me that someone with a rifle could get that close, and it makes you wonder what was happening with Overwatch and why wasn't that roof secure. All of those things are questions that I assume are going to be investigated. But right now, what is the Secret Service doing to enhance security?
Well, we have a statement out early Monday morning, this morning, from Kimberly Cheadle, who, of course, is the head of the Secret Service. And it's lengthy, but the bottom line at the end, she kind of buried the lead. At the end, she says, we have made changes to President Trump, former President Trump's Secret Service detail, and some changes to what they are going to do at the Republican National Convention. So we don't have details of those changes, but we know that changes have been made. And you're right, Gordon. It raises a whole host of questions. The first one, well, there's so many, right? But, how in the world does a shooter get 150 yards away on a rooftop from the former president speaking? And there's so many more. But that's that. Let's start there, shall we? Secret Service agents are trained to take out someone from 1,000 yards away. But how was someone 150 yards away able to get there? So, and there were obviously, it seems to be, there were warning signs from folks there at the rally. So they're going to be up against it for sure.
Let's switch to President Biden. I didn't think anything could take the drumbeat out of the news that Democrats are urging him to pull out of the campaign. All of that seems to have absolutely evaporated. So what's the impact of this event, and is Biden now locked in as the Democrat candidate?
Such a great question. You really couldn't write the screenplay for this. I mean, who would have thought this? That, let me get this straight. Biden may survive from a campaign perspective. He may continue to stay on because why? There's a crisis now. And what's that crisis? It's about his political opponent, an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. So a bullet aimed at Donald Trump may not just, it didn't just save, President Trump's okay, but it may have just indeed saved President Biden from resigning his campaign in 2024. It's just wild because, right, you're right, Gordon, Democrats now toning down and basically putting that on the back burner. If there's a crisis going on, the last thing they want to do is start to call for Biden to step down when he's in the middle of a crisis. But in this case, it's a crisis about his political opponent. So my goodness, Gordon, literally you can't make this stuff up.
Any vice president pick? You got any intel on that?
I've said for a while, I believe it's going to be J.D. Vance. He's going to come under criticism. He said some very negative stuff about Donald Trump in the past. That'll be fodder for a lot of the social media and cable networks. I think it'll be J.D. Vance. And the reason I say that, the senator from Ohio, is because he's pretty much most in line with Trump's populist policies. The wild card pick here could be Ben Carson. And quite frankly, after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania over the weekend, boy, Ben Carson looks even better now to be kind of that voice of reason, that calm chamomile tea, if you will, of politics. He seems like he definitely will dial down the rhetoric. So we'll see. That's been the wild card pick all along, but I think J.D. Vance is probably going to be the one.
All right. David, thanks for being with us. And it looks like you're up for a very busy year.
Yeah, for sure.